Welcome to Music and Medicine. Welcome to Music and Medicine.
Welcome to Music and Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Moshe Lewis.
Welcome to Music and Medicine. I'm really happy and excited today to be in the presence of music royalty. Mr. Kevin Flournoy comes across as a very modest individual, but he's musical director for Chaka Khan. His roots go so deep that it's really hard to imagine, starting with people like Donny, Osmond, Gladys Knight. Currently doing work with Lamont Dozier Jr. And with this show that I love that he and I have been talking about a little bit called basically In the Flow is my name for it, but his production company K-Flow puts together these incredible performances you just must check out. So we're going to talk with him a bit, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Great to be
really
here.
A pleasure.
Good to see you finally. Huh?
Sure, yeah, we pulled it off. So I kind of want to roll back. I mean, you're a composer, keyboardist, arranger, producer now. How you got started in this music business, because you wear so many hats now that it's incredible.
I basically started everything when I was young, so it's good when you start when you're young,
right?
Because you don't know any better, and you can find out what your passion is early. And I had a family, especially my dad was musical. He was in the Marine Corps. He played trombone in the Marine Corps band, so the music was there.
Right.
I used to watch him in parades and all that, and so at a certain point, he took my brothers and my sisters and I to a music store.
Sure.
And he told us just to pick out an instrument, and that's what you're going to be playing.
Okay.
And it wasn't just pick out an instrument and have fun with it.
Right.
It was you're going to rehearse it.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to hour a day. Yeah, it was serious.
Right.
And so I actually picked out the guitar when I was young. So
Okay.
I did 2 years of that. So I started studying music. I enjoyed it. My sister had the keyboard actually.
Okay.
And I kind of liked her thing better.
Sure.
So I switched over. And from then I just started taking different types of lessons. I played Hammond organ, went and played classical piano. You know, usually when you take piano, it's a classical
Sure.
twist to it. As a teenager, got into jazz in college, and the composition was somewhat natural to me, like being able to compose songs.
Right.
But when you play organ, at a young age, you learn, you know, it's all your limbs are going.
Right.
The feet,
Right.
and so the right hand's playing the lead, there's chords, and you learn chords at an early age, which it's not the same when you play classical.
Right, no.
So I learned the composition, how music was made. And I would play pop music. I remember playing the Bee Gees, and,
Right.
yeah, the Elton John, and at an early age, and then so my writing thing began to develop.
Sure.
From that experience.
Absolutely. Now, when you, so many different amazing artists you've worked with sort of had that big break, what would you say that it was?
The big break, and I can tell you the way it works. The way it works, and you hear this when people tell their stories. You come to LA, and I went to college at UCSD in San Diego. And so when I graduated, because I was an engineering major,
Okay.
and then a music science minor. When I graduated, I had a job offer as an engineer, and I had a recording contract offer as a musician, so I had to choose.
Okay.
So I chose to go to LA. When you do that, it's going to be some years.
Yeah,
Nobody
by that time.
knows you.
Right.
You don't know anything, and so from 5 to 10 years, you know, you're just working. The initial break came. I came in playing jazz, and actually I'm producing a record right now with Ronnie Laws.
Yes.
And he was one of the first people that I played with, you know, when I went to LA, that was visual. And I ended up doing a lot of vocal, you know, I play with a lot of vocalists now.
Sure.
And so the first people were actually the Emotions.
Oh, really? Wow.
And so when you start doing festivals or concerts and you play for one of them,
Right.
everybody else is there looking at
Sure,
you.
right.
Sometimes I would get off the stage and they would say, can you play with us?
Right.
And then it starts growing.
Right.
And the biggest one early on, like in the 90s, was Tina Marie. I did 3 years with her.
Right.
And from there you start meeting everybody. And if you're good and you excel in that, you end up getting other names.
What are some of those unique qualities that you feel you like to infuse into some of your arrangements, but also just in working with artists?
Yeah, you learn things, and I had the benefit of studying under Professor Jimmy Cheatham. He was basically out of New York when I was in college. And he used to talk to us. This is outside of we was in a big band. about how to actually make money in music, not just to play it.
Right.
Like later on, you're gonna need this skill. One of the skills he used to say, and I'm like 18, 19. You hear it, but you don't
Doesn't
really understand. But he communicates it to you by the way you playing too. So I remember playing in the big band and play a solo.
Sure.
And then he would just stop the whole band and say, "Okay, what are you doing?" Right, because usually we come in and we think we're hot stuff because we playing from we're the best from the high school.
Yes.
And he basically breaks it down like, okay, that's not the way to communicate. And then he starts making analogies to your playing, to like breathing, inhale, exhale, how the listener wants to hear it, and that will get you the jobs later on. One thing he told me, which got me a lot of jobs, is that when singers are singing, you're playing behind them, you got to deal with space. So if you have the skills to do this, they're no good. I mean, it's good, but it's no good when you're playing with Gladys Knight.
Right.
Or Donny Osmond. They want to hear you support them in a certain way.
Yeah.
I learned that early, and he was right.
Sure.
Because when I started playing and getting jobs, everybody was calling.
Right.
And I was like, wow, he was right.
Yes, absolutely. I want to tease that out and keep going back and forth between your current production that you're doing, because when I see the way that you put it together, and I know it wasn't accidental, you started off with some of the background singers and working with them and recording those sessions. And then your musicians, and then you do sort of little small debuts of each of the singers and things like that. Talk to me about that constructive process that really is very methodical, very much Kevin, where you really put everything together very carefully over time, as opposed to we're gonna have one day, one shot, we'll rehearse a couple of hours or a couple of days before, but that's it. You really construct over time.
Yeah, and I think you're talking about the process of the studio,
Yeah.
because recently I did the live thing,
Right.
which is similar, but it's just some other things going on there. So in terms of if I'm doing a major project and involves the background singers and musicians, there's a lot of planning ahead of time.
Yes.
Because by the time I get into what I call the big studios, where a lot of money's being spent, you got to have it very organized, and it starts about. You have to select the right people for the right job.
Right.
And when you get into, I don't know if you heard it, the studio musician is somewhat different from the live guy. And there's a certain, I call them scientists in the studio. So the guitar player is an actual scientist. When he's talking about guitars, he has like 1 million of them at the house.
Right.
He knows how to fix every string, every peg. He's a scientist. The bass player, the same thing. The drummer's the same thing. Those are the people that are in the studio. Then they have a certain feel. Studio playing is extremely difficult. And they have a feel that they're putting down on the tracks, because it's not just about playing the song, it's about making it special, your performance special. And it takes years to be able to figure that out. So I have that selective process of who's going to be together. The background singing is the same thing, because a lot of people approach me, I want to sing background, and I'm like, you don't want none of this. You really don't. Because it's very difficult. To be in sync, to breathe at the same time with the people next to you, the same type of texture. There's a lot of things that normally you don't think about.
Sure.
And so the process is to amass all those people, to gather those people together that's going to fit, and the personalities too. Where most of these people that I work with are stars, like they're touring with, Phil Collins and Rodney. They're on the high level, and so. The attitude to where I can sit back and receive instruction today from just somebody is very important, because those who can't do that, it becomes difficult when we're trying to produce music, and same as the band members. And so I just kind of build upon that and then bring everybody together to do a special session.
Sure. So let's pick somebody in particular that kind of came up out of the woodwork, so to speak, Shannon.
Okay.
And when you're going to have her do this solo piece, and how, like you said, initially the initial approach was as a background singer. Let's use her story as an example of how you really go and look for these sort of key elements, and then heard something even amazing.
Yeah, I sometimes, like in her case, sometimes I have people in my circle that'll say, "Go check out this person," even though I know them, but go check them out. Right. And so on the tune that I have, my first single. She was called in to sing background on it. And on the tell me part, actually to add, I had some backgrounds already laid. Her voice is like an incredible has incredible texture, pop texture to it. And so I laid on top of a lot of songs. And it actually makes it younger sounding, which is, it appeals to a different way to different people. And so I had her in the studio, and it was the day that Phil Perry was going to sing his lead, and he didn't really know her per se. And I just remember in the studio, and she came in to sing the background. She had sang that already. He had finished his lead, and then they met in the control room together, and they're talking. And I said, Shannon, then I had made the decision. Well, Phil had sang the bridge on that particular song on the bridge, the original version. Female sings it. But Phil had that high voice, so he was going to originally sing the whole thing because he's good. And so she was there. I said, why don't we try Shannon? And I remember she was sitting down, and Phil had talked to her, and she didn't know the lyrics at the time. So she brought it up on the phone and listened to it was the SOS band listening to the lyrics, and then she went out there and sang it. So she's a pro. Her background's incredible, with Natalie Cole and George Duke, and so she hit it like the first time she sang it, and even Phil's like, "Whoa, who's this?" It was amazing. Texture, because she's at that level to where we were taught, like when we were young, when you play, you play like it's going to be your last chord, your last note, every time you play. And some people don't do that, but you got to give it up, put your everything into it. So when she went out there, she did. That's what you see on the video. I captured that. And then that was an amazing thing. I said, okay, so now you're going to be doing the bridge, and it worked out.
And I think you guys are almost at 1 million streams.
Yeah, it's coming up live next week.
Absolutely. It's like, I know it.
Which is a great thing for this genre. To be able to do that with the video and urban, to be able to do that with real music and real playing.
Absolutely. And I wanted to get at those elements that you think help establish that. And you said some of them just casually, though. Real instruments, real singing. Amazing preparation. Then the cinematic piece of it, I get the whole movie piece that also comes in there, but that's sort of the modernist. It's that foundation. What are those key elements that you think really allow the music to continue to survive and thrive, especially just given the quality?
Yeah, and that can be a scientific conversation too, because a lot of things have to line up for all of that to work fluidly. And so in that particular song, it might be different for every song. This particular song, first I went back and I selected a song that people know. And that's not even good enough, because you got to be careful with that, because when you redo it, if you're too far off the mark, then you get criticized for that. Or it sounds like you're trying, but you didn't quite do it right. And so that's just between me and the music. So I do what it calls a hybrid. So I have the old school cats are playing on it, but I have all the young pop thing I'm doing on the computer, and I mesh them together. And so it's subtle. You might not even know you're hearing it. I'm doing that on every instrument. And so it sounds very young, but it still sounds like the old, but it's not old. And then to have, like Phil Perry just, he's in the last couple of years, he got inducted to the Hall of Fame. It's to have that 50 years. So when they enter into the studio, they're bringing stuff on the microphone. There's the presentation and delivery, which you don't see that often here, because we can fix everything on the computer. That's not what's happening there. So people can feel that emotion coming out of him when he's singing. And he's been doing it for a long time. So to put that on top of all those elements, and then I had that extra Shannon thing happen, so that female, the male thing, the kind of duet thing happening that you don't see much. And then I had to, like with the filming of it, that cinematic presentation, which you don't see much with that kind of music either. It's all those things lined up, and I think that's why organically it's like incredible the last 3-4 months.
Absolutely. I want to juxtapose that with somebody like Lamont Dozier, who comes across very benign, and as soon as he opens his mouth. And so just talk to us about working with someone like him, his son.
So he's getting his genetic disposition there from his dad, Lamont Dozier. And just to hear him talk about his experience. He tells me some stories about when he was young, and he's, from being in the Detroit area, and they, a lot of things were happening coming out of that area, and how he was being taken care of Aretha Franklin in the house, because his dad's next to everybody.
Right.
So he's coming up under that. His class, so his presentation, as you know, is very classic.
Yes.
And we got that EP we did where he did one song was a tribute to his dad.
Yes.
But the other stuff, just his flavor, it spoke to me because when I came into town, all the greats were still doing it. It was Luther, Whitney, they were still doing it. There's a certain presentation and gift that they have. And he had that spark because he grew up in that.
Yeah.
And so the process of getting together with him and developing music that sounds, same thing, it's a thing where it's classic, but it has a certain newness to it. And then him on top, as you hear him, it's just fluid.
Sure. And then finally now putting it all together for your presentation, the program that you had was very successful at the Miracle Theater a few weeks ago. Tell us sort of how you appreciate sort of the reception that you have from a larger audience now even that really can sort of see all these people, the whole essentially shebang. You're putting together essentially years worth of work.
Yes.
In your case, even with these artists, because each one you've worked with over time.
And what you're seeing, people don't, until maybe later, they're going to understand exactly what they're looking at, but it's kind of what you're saying. They're looking at a culmination of everything I ever learned.
Right.
From a kid on a stage, and there's a lot of people on stage, a lot of different types of music. Like I started this show with the music from Africa,
Right.
and which I go there every year now, and I did some of the recordings there. So there's a whole experience there. That started in college when I was studying, playing with African music, African fusion. There's that. There's Lamont. I have, just everything's happening on stage.
Yeah.
Bill Withers' daughter was on there on the last show, and she's telling her story. And the thing about that, his music is something I was playing since I'm a teenager.
Right.
So it's all connected. It's not just people up there singing. There's stories. Within that time period, I don't have time to tell the whole story. But over time, I will. But so doing that show was like kind of an incredible launch because I've done that filming, like in a setting like this, but live there's a lot of other stuff going on,
and a lot to juggle.
Yeah, a lot to juggle. Yeah, with everything,
right.
And so it was. So I'm coming back in the summer to do it again.
Absolutely, and that's what I want to ask and kind of lead into what we can look forward to and sort of what your bigger plans are because, like I said, your process, it literally is like putting together a full movie production. I know you have that cinematic piece, but all of these elements assembled over a tremendous amount of time between working individually with the studio, working individually with the band, finding the backup singers and things like that, and then pulling it all together is tremendously visionary. We don't see that these days as much.
Yes, I'm looking forward to the next one. So the last show at the Miracle, I call it, I've taken notes and I'm coming strong this next one. And so I decided to switch up the intro, and I did my thing from Africa, and then it's going to probably be more of a Latin thing coming in at the beginning. I got a special guest going to be July 22nd. Actually, it's the date, Saturday night. I'll be there, and it's going to be some amazing. I'm already talking to people.
Absolutely.
I'm going to go in the back. I used to go to where I've toured with a lot of people, as you know, and I've already talked to a couple, and they're going to make a surprise. Here I am.
Sure, absolutely. Our show is called Music and Medicine. When you hear those types of words, given how methodical you are with everything that you've done, what does that mean to you?
As you said, music, medicine.
Yeah.
When you first said that, I thought about when I was back in college, when I was being talked to by the professor.
Sure.
He used to bring that kind of thing up. Basically, it was how music affects you, and when we play chords, how it affects your whole being by what chord we're playing, your mood, and so I take that in consideration when I'm writing. Like this is going to be a certain mood, and to be soothing, it's like a kind of a medicine. Or you can like maybe pep somebody up when you want some energy, like an energy drink. That's a different type of song.
Sure. Right.
And so that's what I think about when you said that. I went back, and he used to talk about actually music as medicine for real. Like in the medical field, he was telling me things that they would do with music to help patients and stuff. And so that's my mind went there when you said that term.
Absolutely. your mind's always going, and we can't confine you to a genre because there's so many that you love and excel at. What do you do to sort of relax a bit, unwind, and really kind of decompress? Because you are always sort of this master puppeteer, choreographer.
First thing I do is turn all music off.
Okay, good to hear. Okay.
And I always tell people this story. We was getting off stage with Chaka Khan, right? So we get in the van and we got to go to the hotel. So the band's in, and so the driver turned on them some music. Sure. And the other keyboard player back said, "Can you turn that off?" And he said, "We hate music." We hate music. It was kind of funny because we're all, musicians. Right. Yeah, we don't want to hear no music right now. And like when I drive stuff, turn all that off. I just, because it's actually when I'm working, it's this kind of nonstop.
Right, and then that perfectionism part that's really constantly critiquing, putting things together. So no, it's very insightful.
Yeah, you're right. I just got to the point where I can, like the first single, where I can listen to it like a normal person hears it, because I'm hearing the triangle, and I'm hearing every element of the song, and. When I get away, and actually, sometimes when I record, say I play a solo, it was like 5 years ago, and I'll hear it, and the band used to laugh, and it comes on somewhere. I say, "Oh, that's that song. That's a nice solo." And they say, "That's you playing," and I disconnected from it, and so I can enjoy it. And I just almost getting to that part with the new single.
Sure.
Where I can hear
Maybe
it.
the last question, because I think what you just described kind of hints at the nuance of almost being such a genius that one can almost be imprisoned by their own level of expertise, professionalism, and also creativity, juxtaposed to trying to chill and relax and decompress and be normal. How do you think that people really can best strike that balance? I mean, clearly for you, it may be saying, "Hey, let's turn it off."
Yeah, I mean, in terms of other people, finding that balance, first to recognize that you need a balance is a good thing.
Right.
Because sometimes people don't; they're just going.
Right.
You need a balance, and in my case, I said turn it off. But it might be a different form of music that you go into where you can kind of relax, or just displace yourself totally from your environment to another environment. To do that, when I tour, we go to all over the place, all different countries, and one of the things I do, it is sort of a disconnection. So when I first get there, I will put my bags in the room, and I go out in South America, chill wherever, and I just go out there, and nobody knows me now, Right. So it's an interesting experience because it's a disconnection from the touring, everything, and it's just me. And before we had phones, I would get lost sometimes. But now we have phones, I can find my way back. Right. But that's something I traditionally, as in Singapore, wherever we go, I do that. And that's a form of balancing for me.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, the work is incredible.
Thank you.
July 22nd. We're looking forward to it. Will you be in Inglewood again?
Yeah, same place,
Awesome.
Miracle Theater.
Sure. Such a rebirth, so to speak, of not only some songs that we love. Each of the singers are picking songs that themselves have been classics, but like you said, they're putting some of their twist onto it, and then the work that you've done with them to really even bring it to another level. And the videography, the cinematography, the musicianship is just spectacular. And
Thanks.
as I told you, and it was a sincere compliment. It really wasn't any trying to way kiss up to you. Though I wouldn't mind doing that. I was just blown away. And this is even before seeing the full production, just seeing what you were putting together with Lamont on the couch and Shannon, different artists presenting and things like that. I really felt like you were bringing it into our homes and making it palatable and enjoyable, but also just so easygoing and helping us relive all the memories that we have with those songs.
Yes.
So thanks so much.
Oh, thanks for having me. All right.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it. All
Thanks.
right.